Welcome back to Pybites YouTube. In today's video, I wanted to write a little script to help article authors on our blog help search for content that we already have posted, because I think we're reaching 400 articles, so there's a lot of stuff. And we have an API actually of articles. We sync all the articles to a database, which is accessible here. So let's write a little script to parse that API endpoint and make a little class to search through the articles. And let's make the output really nice using rich. So let's go. My little alias to make a virtual environment. It creates it with the venv built in and activates it. Let's pip install feed parser. No, actually request. It's confused because often we use the feed parser for the XML feed, but now we're going to get a response from an API, and request will do just that. Open the script.py. And before writing class or functions, just get something working fast. So API URL. Import requests. Response equals requests get API URL. That should get us at least a 200, right? And it does. All right, let's inspect what we get back. Again, a 200, that's good. And we got a JSON response. Can pretty print that. Awesome. So that's a list, which type will tell you, of dictionaries. And every dictionary is like this. All right. So at the core, I can do for row in response JSON and say if my search term is pandas. And we're of course going to code that all into arguments and stuff and have user enter it. But yeah, for every row, let's say we look for title, tags, and summary. We could even mesh them together. So say we have so we could look at if search term lower in title plus summary plus tags, which is a string, lower. So a case insensitive search. If it matches, print the title. All right. Well, and the link as well. Is there anything else? Probably also want to end up with the published date later in the result table. See if that works. And it seems that works. By the way, when I ran the code, I was doing comma p, a shortcut in my Vim. That's of course the same as doing Python script.py. So we got something basic working. Of course it's ugly, but it's very important to for me to work this way in small steps, small increments. That just makes a lot of sense for me, and then make it pretty later, but get something working fast. Another search we can do is on Django, and then maybe mixed case. And indeed, well, normally we write it with, well, yeah, the fact that NG were uppercase. It does match case insensitively. So that's cool. All right. Next step. Let's put this in a class. It could do a function, of course, but as this is going to be an interactive program where the user is going to ask for search term after search term, it can be beneficial to preload the response from the request into an attribute. So we have to make that network call only once, right? So I'm going to call it class article searcher. It's going to have a constructor, but I don't need arguments. And I'm going to say self data equals get data. And let's write that method. And basically we're going to do this. We can also raise an exception if there's not a response, not a 200 response, or if there's a 400 or 500 response, so a bad condition that we cannot get the data. Raise for status, return response JSON. All right. Notice that there's not anything related to the class here, no self-reference, right? So we can actually make this a static method. And then it's basically a plain function, but we grouped it into the class. So that's pretty useful. And I'm going to make a search method. That is a method because it's going to operate on the self.data. And it's going to take a search term. And here's where we're actually going to do this part, right? So the search term comes in, we need to lowercase that. This now is captured in self data. And I think the rest is the same. So let's quickly validate that. So if name equals main, basically if we run this module directly as opposed to importing it. No, article searcher, make an instance. And call search on it with say Django, right? Let's see if that works. Let's see if Flake 8 is happy as well. Local variable published is assigned but never used. We will get there. Expected 2 lines, found 1. Of course, yeah. Between classes there need to be 2 new lines. Perfect. And if we then search for, do a second search on Heroku, we should see Heroku things. And notice that it's pretty fast because again, we're using the cached data. And actually the search is deep, right? Like this article doesn't mention Heroku in the title, but going to it, it's mentioned in the body of the article. 2 more things. So we want the output to look nice, right? So I think we're going to split this into retrieving the articles and reporting or showing, printing the articles, right? So I'm going to make this get articles for search term. That's a bit long actually, but it does show the intent well, which is nice. This can be term because search term is already part of the method name. And this should only take care of yielding the results, right? So we could use a named tuple for the exact result. I mean, we already have row, which is a dictionary. which we almost verbatimly going to use, but we can be more explicit in our return by making a new named tuple. I always used collections for that up until I saw from typing import named tuple, and now you can define named tuples with typing, which is really cool. So I'm going to define an article inherit from named tuple, and it's going to have, let's keep this simple, title, URL, published, or what do we want to show really? Yeah, I think published. Note this could be a datetime, but we're getting this as string, and so it's just going to be a simple string for now. So title, URL, published, right? And then when we match a result, we can return that as, so we can build up a list and then append to the list, but we can also make this a generator, and then it would be yield, and then we make an article named tuple instance, so that would be title equals title. Again, that's title, URL, published, URL's link, and published is published. And of course, we get a bunch of results back, which is a generator. So to get all the results in one go, we have to materialize that into a list. See if that still works. And it does. We get a nice bunch of article name tuples containing title, URL, and published. Sweet. So now we decoupled the retrieval of information from the reporting. So now I actually want to do something like searcher show results. Right? And for that, let's use some rich. So for that, of course, I need to pip install rich. And here is a small example which will give us a really awesome looking table on the command line, right? So I'm going to do the imports, make a table, I think I'm just going to keep that all in the show results. And it will be matching Pybites articles. And we need a bunch of columns. Which will be title, link, or URL. Link is fine. Published. I'm going to go with those styles. You can, of course, add new colors. And then we need to add the rows and print on the console. Right? And I think the cool thing is we can do it like row.attribute, row.attribute. But I think we can even tuple unpack it. And it would understand that an article has 3 attributes, and it would then unpack them to the 3 arguments it's expecting. So that's really nice and concise, beautiful Python. So let's try that. Awesome. It's not showing though, but we're seeing rich at least. Let me see what happened. Add column, 3 columns. The row unpacking was not really working, I think. Let's see. Yeah, so that's weird because there are 3 elements, but maybe we need keyword unpacking actually. Let me try that. No, it's not a dictionary. Okay, well, there's also something to say to be explicit, right? So row.link, link, right? Yeah, no, URL, row.published. Let's see if that works. It does not. Is that then maybe a display issue? I don't like that justifying anyway. Also, well, let's go one step at a time. Justify. Okay, it's not even there, the data. Okay, so it was the wrapping element. There you go. Yeah, title, link, published. And by default, the most recent are at the top, which is cool with me. Yeah, sweet. So lastly, no, one thing, there's no self in here. So we might be making this a static method as well then. Yeah, because it's not really, it doesn't have any class stuff, right? So it's actually just a function we decided to group in a class. Lastly, this is still hard coding the search. So what if we have an infinite loop, have the user ask for search term and then exit when they type Q or something. So we can actually make an entry point in the class or treat it as a callable by, so for example, we want this, and then this would actually kickstart an infinite loop asking them for inputs, right? Well, you can achieve that. So basically the instance, we can make it callable by adding a dunder call. So for example, let's do that here. And we can go into an infinite loop, ask the user for an input. Actually, the input built-in is nice, but I wonder if Rich has something for that. And they do, right? So let's do it nicely. I've not used this. This is purely unscripted. I was going to go with the input built-in. That's the cool thing about producing content. You learn a lot yourself as well. All right, so that will be search term. Enter a search term. And then if the search term equals Q, we say bye. And we break out of that infinite loop, right? Beyond that, we're going to use our beautiful methods. So what did we say? Get data? No, get articles for search term. Search term. And then we're going to self show results, passing in those results. And that should do it. Undefined name results, because I mistyped this. And by the way, notice that we don't cast it to a list. It's a generator, right? But as we're going to use it in the for loop is smart enough to exhaust the generator. So we won't hit a stop iteration exception. So that's nice. Notice as it's a generator, we can only use it once, but that's exactly what we're going to do. If for some reason the results you would need them multiple times, then you need to store the whole thing in memory, and that you can do with by casting it to a list. All right. Let's run Flake. Actually, I can also use black. Reformat it. All right, cool. So when black is okay, usually Flake 8 is also okay. Let me see. Enter a search term. Ooh, the dot is already provided. This is a bit ugly. So there you go. This is something, a habit from using input, which does that better. All right, Heroku. Boom. I'm not sure if we have to implement something like scroll. It is true that I'm like having a super big font, so normally I would work with something like this. Awesome. Django. Collections. Really nice. Carbon. Selenium. You can see I already go into a rabbit hole, right? Flask, Fast API, PDM maybe, a little bit, yeah. Data science, sweet. Data, dict, DAC, nice. Module, requests, cache, very nice. Queue, oops, buy, okay. So yeah, there you go. A complete article searcher class. Just a recap. We cache the API call into an attribute, self.data. We use static methods when the code is not really related to the class. It's more like a function. I mean, this could also be a function outside of the class, but what I learned from Raymond Hatchinger, that if you have an instance and you do a dir on it, this method now shows up. So it's really nice for interface documentation. And it's a way of grouping this function inside the class, meaning encapsulation. I can only use this function inside this class, which is cool. So we search for articles based on the search term, and we just concatenate title, summary, text together, lowercasing both the term as well as those attributes so that the search is case insensitive. We isolated the show result in a separate step and use, again, a static method because this is not related to, doesn't have any self. And we use rich for a beautiful result table. And then we had a call dunder as well to have an interactive program for the user. They can just keep searching. And notice here, this was really fast because we're making the call to the API once. It's cached in quotes. It's kind of cached at the class level in an attribute, right? Preloaded. We used some typing. We can of course also type the methods, but this was a nice modern way of defining a named tuple. An immutable sequence typically used for records, which was exactly our use case. When the user types Q, we exit, we're done. We get the results and pass them into the show results. The methods are a bit longer, but they're, in that sense, it's very readable code. When I will go back, get articles for search term is really easy to reason about. We make an instance of the class and then we call the instance, and that's possible due to the call dunder method, it's a special method. So I hope this is useful. Send me a message if you have any feedback, a comment below. Or you can also hit me up on Twitter. I'm at @bbelderbos, or maybe easier at Pybites. And always feel free to give me feedback and suggestions for new topics on this channel or for Pybites content overall. Have a great day and thanks for watching.